All right, so let's get started. So hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. So my name is Rachel and I am the marketing manager for Asia Pacific here at Acquia. So today's presentation is called How to Enhance Customer Experience Through Personalized Automated Solutions. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have questions for us, we are saving time at the end. So please be sure to use the Q&A or chat windows to submit your questions and we'll bring them up at the end. So this presentation is being recorded and we will share it with you at the end of the session. So we have with us today, Phil Koo, our Marketing Cloud Director for Asia Pacific. So Phil has over 2 decades of experience working with global businesses, helping them leverage digital technology to grow revenue, reduce costs, and help customer engagement. So he's passionate about making organizations more customer and data-centric through embedding data-driven personalization, experimentation, and human-centered design. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Phil. So Phil, all right, Phil, so take it away.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you everybody for joining. Yeah, I'm really excited today. So today, as you know, is our the final webinar in the series. So for those of you who are joined in previous webinars, thank you so much for coming along. For those of you who are new to the webinar, thank you also for joining. The previous webinars have also been recorded, so you can view them from the Acquia website if you're interested. As you know, we're today talking about how to enhance CX through personalization and through automated solutions, and it's a really exciting area to be in at the moment. There's a lot happening in the space. You know, we've got hopefully a lot of great content in this webinar, and again, this webinar has been recorded as well. So if you'd like to share it or if you'd like to catch up, by all means, view the recording. We also have a number of assets available on the Acquia website in these areas around personalization and automation. So if you're interested, jump on to the Acquia website, take a look through our resources we have available in terms of blog articles, ebooks, and webinars, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of content which I think is fantastic for marketers as they're coming up to speed in these areas. So yeah, it's great to see everybody here. Look, we've created this webinar series based on the research that we did in our global and Asia Pacific CX survey. So in our previous webinars, we talked through the survey results for a couple of key markets in Asia Pacific, Australia and Singapore specifically. And we discussed the 3 trends that we're seeing here. So you'll see here the first webinar introduced these 3 trends, but the trends were really emerging from that survey results, how you know, some of the aspects of technology and where businesses and brands in Asia Pacific were in terms of their technology journey in areas such as marketing automation, personalization, and managing customer data effectively. Also, just the role of the second part was around talent. So you know, what the impact is on talent. You know, as organizations go through building digital maturity, what needs to happen in the talent space, where are there talent shortages, and we discuss some of the ways that you can overcome these talent shortages. And today's webinar, look, we're talking through how to enhance CX through personalization and automation. So without further ado, I will kick off. Just a little briefly around the survey itself. It was a global survey conducted by Acquia, independent survey, and it was reasonably large in its scale and ambition. The survey encompassed interviews with 8,000 consumers and over 800 marketers in different countries, including in our region, of course, Australia, Japan, and Singapore. It was really useful because it enables us to compare how we are doing in Asia Pacific and in terms of our, you know, embracing some of the technologies and navigating some of the challenges, particularly in respect of, you know, of the COVID challenge globally. And if you download the survey, the global survey or the local surveys, you can see some of those results. And again, they're available on the Acquia website. So this one specifically today, we're talking about, you know, the broad theme of touch points, so customer touch points. In our last webinar, we discussed the impact of talent, and today we're going to delve in a little bit more deeper into the third emerging trend, being touch points. So one of the key trends revealed in the survey was that the impact that changes in consumer touch points are having on businesses across Asia Pacific, and that there are some major talent gaps as well. So, you know, if you look at the sort of the macro challenges that businesses are having, nearly a quarter of Australian brands reported that they had to reduce their workforces because of economic pressures due to COVID. And these challenges actually lend themselves to businesses looking at things in a slightly new way and starting to delve into these areas of actually, well, potentially how can we use solutions like automation, marketing automation, process automation to combat some of the talent shortages that we might have. So we discussed that a little bit last time, but today we're going to look at really touch points as far as how we can actually start to use our understanding of customer journeys, our understanding of digital touch points and physical touch points, what data can be collected or should be being collected at each one of these touch points, and then how we can assemble that data and aggregate that data to become the fuel that drives personalization and enables automation. So as hopefully most of you are aware, personalization and automation are super hot topics right now. We know this for a couple of ways. The results from the CX survey show us that even prior to COVID, brands across Asia Pacific were already investing heavily in personalization. And what you'll see here is some of the data from that survey. So in Singapore, brands have been investing heavily in areas such as marketing automation. So 65% of the brands, in fact, surveyed had been making investments in marketing automation, customer data platforms as well. So customer data platforms is a really exciting area, and in fact 64% of Singaporean brands have been investing in customer data platforms, significantly ahead of the curve globally, which is really encouraging because it shows that in Singapore, actually, it's not lagging at all in terms of thinking or strategic thinking. In fact, it's ahead of the curve and embracing some of these new technologies to help deliver these personalized experiences. Similar story in Australia, slightly different figures. Marketing automation, again, even higher numbers of brands, 71%. So nearly 3/4 of the brands surveyed in Australia have invested in marketing automation in some way, shape or form, but also encouragingly a high percentage in CDP's customer data platforms, and I guess AI and machine learning technologies is also not too far behind. And again, the trend here is that Australian brands are actually ahead of the curve, which is interesting, and I find that really encouraging for the market as a whole, but also for the types of experiences that these brands will be able to give their customers, and all of us loves a fantastic customer experience. So I guess that's a little bit of detail around why we think marketing automation and personalization and these areas are hot topics. I mean, the second piece really is that as there's been a significant shift to digital engagement, digital customer engagement globally, and there's a number of reasons for that. But one of the key reasons, of course, is just the social distancing restrictions that have been put in place over the last since the pandemic began over a year ago. And look, I find this data fascinating from McKinsey, that it shows that remote workers, the levels of remote working have really skyrocketed and are actually likely to remain higher than where they were pre-COVID for some time. So this information shows us the share of employees who have been working remotely full-time in various categories across IT and professional services, financial activities and manufacturing. So the trend really is that where people have been able to work remotely, they have been, and also that they are some incredible jumps from 9% of employees and information working remotely full-time to 84%. But there is also data to support the fact that while a number of employees may be returning back to work full-time or part-time once the social distancing restrictions are lifted, many won't be, or they will be actually just working part-time in the office or going in a couple of days a week. So that means that they are less likely to engage with brands physically, and therefore brands cannot actually create those personalization experiences in store as they would have liked to or would have been used to previously. So they have to rely on technology to do it. And when you can't have a face-to-face conversation or a face-to-face interaction, and you can't read body language, and you can't understand the sentiment in someone's tone of voice, then you need to rely on other tools to to create that kind of personalization and build empathy with that customer. So, the other, I guess, the knock-on effect on, people working from home and the changes as a result of COVID is that, there's a huge shift in consumer behavior and usage of digital channels. This is some data from our CX survey again in Singapore. It shows us that social media usage increased in Singapore. 63% of respondents suggested that their usage of social media had increased during the pandemic. And the interesting thing here is it's so much higher than global consumers. So the Singaporean consumer is very, very adept at moving at pace to new channels, picking up new technologies, increasing the usage of new technologies, and similar results are in other markets. But you can see from things like other mobile apps, gaming programs, and smart TVs. Mobile communication apps, etc. The data in Singapore just shows overwhelmingly that there's a massive increase in those usage. So what this means for brands is that there are more people online. There's more people engaging with digital channels. There's a proliferation of digital channels, and this actually makes it quite hard for brands who potentially don't have those capabilities to understand every interaction, to be able to bring all the data around those interactions together to build that full picture of the consumer. Each new touch point, each new service is yet another application-specific silo of digital capabilities and content and experience. So for both marketing and IT teams, it's keeping up with the web, email, and social channels was hard enough. And now they're being asked, or brands are being asked, to reinvent themselves as digital-first businesses and deliver consistent brand experiences across a whole new range of devices and screens. So that's difficult. So there's two aspects. One is creating that brand consistency across all of device types and all of the different channels and modalities is really getting complex. And secondly, actually understanding and collecting that data and building that view of that customer across all of those interactions is also getting more and more complex. So, one of the reasons that we see that it's becoming more complex is that, even before COVID, consumers had different touch points with brands. So through pre-purchase, for example, they might have some digital interactions with searching using Google Ads or using organic search or maybe clicking through on a Facebook ad into a campaign and then visiting a website. And then as they click through, or as they navigate their brand journey, there's a number of stages, some of which involve physical interactions only, some involve digital interactions only, but increasingly they're a combination of physical and digital interactions. So as the customer moves through the journey, you can see that there are digital touch points here as indicated in blue, and there is also physical or manual touch points as indicated in green there. Now, technology has a role to play in all of these touch points, either by enabling the customer to interact directly with the brand through something like completing a form on a website or ordering something off an e-commerce store, or also technology has a role to play in empowering those physical touch points to be more effective through personalization and through giving those people who are engaging with your customers, your staff, whether they work in service center or retail, or whether they're out in the field, engaging with those customers, giving them access to the information of that customer's entire customer journey. So the challenge for brands I mentioned earlier is that because of the increasingly complexity and numbers of digital channels and different channels available, this generates data silos, content silos, and often organizational silos. So, once a point solution is in place for a specific function, like it might be an app to log a service request, or it might be a form on a website which does a specific task, and that data is collected for that specific task, but isn't shared across the organization ubiquitously. Then you create data silos. You can create content silos. So a campaign through social media may have a certain creative, certain content, certain approach, and then in-store may be separate because it's fed from a different content stream. So, the end result of this, of course, is that the customer doesn't have a particularly positive experience. They have a fragmented experience. And these are some of the types of comments that you'll get from customers who are, have experiences which to them aren't particularly relevant. They're not personalized. They just show a lack of empathy with that customer. So I guess back in the old days when we maybe potentially used to go down to a market and know the person that we were ordering fruit and vegetables from, and know the person that we were potentially ordering clothes from or homewares from. A long time ago, that was very highly personalized because you would have trust in that person. You would know the quality of their produce. You would know the quality of their service. Now when we're ordering from either global brands or regional brands, often it's quite impersonal. So brands have to be even more careful, and they really have to put an additional effort into creating these personalized experiences and building this customer empathy. So if we carry on through to the actual touch points part of the conversation, for me, developing a CX strategy is critical, and for me, there's three essential components to that CX strategy. So the first of these is a customer data strategy, and the customer data strategy will define the customer data model. So, what attributes of that customer do you know? What parameters of that customer are important to you? For example, their transactions, or their location, their level of loyalty, for example. I mean, there's many attributes around a customer, but you need a consistent customer data model that you use as a basis to start. Once you've defined the customer data model, that will really help your brand understand what data you should be collecting, how you should be processing that customer data to deliver the most value to the brand and the best experience for the customer. So, brands should be working to understand how the customer data will be collected, how it will be shared, how it will be protected, what governance is appropriate, what compliance is required. All of these should be features of that customer data strategy. Also things like what analytical capabilities are needed to deliver your CX vision. So what insights do you need to know to empower that CX vision? And how will you support the team, whether it be a digital team or a retail team or customer service team, to deliver the ideal customer journeys in areas like personalization, customer preferences, product recommendations, and how are you going to get these ad hoc customer insights? So what insights will be valuable to have available at all times? And then how will you build a customer 360 that consolidates and unifies customer identities across a range of these separate customer journeys that we talked through earlier? The second component is, and it's really based on what comes out of the customer data strategy, but your personalization strategy. So we know that customers respond favorably to personalized experiences when they're done well. So obviously sending me an ad, if I did a search for a certain item in Google or YouTube or wherever it may be, and I start seeing ads about this thing, well, at a certain point, that's okay. But obviously if it's abused, and if that ad is appearing in every social feed that I'm ever on, and then maybe I purchase that product from that brand or from a competitor, and those ads never disappear, well, that's a negative experience. So personalization is a two-way street. It can be a very powerful way to communicate empathetically with your customers and tailor your business to their specific needs when it's done well. So the personalization strategy allows you to identify segments of visitors with distinct preferences or needs, and then create targeted experiences for them. The strategy will identify use cases where personalization will add value, and hopefully will produce a prioritized personalization roadmap. So if you're not familiar with these areas, or if your organization doesn't have the skills in-house, you can obviously reach out to agencies and partners. Agencies and partners can be experts in these spaces, and they can really help accelerate your progress. They can also provide a different perspective and maybe approach things in a way that you hadn't thought about before. So getting a degree of independence when you're starting to look at areas like personalization and automation is really, really helpful. But personalization strategy will start to consider things like, are you currently delivering the same digital experience to your customers and prospects? So if I'm already a customer of yours, and I bought a certain number of items, and I visit your homepage, do I have the same experience? Or or do you understand that actually 75% of those customers are visiting your homepage because they have a complaint, or they want to make a recommendation, or they have a question, or they want a service assistance, and in which case you could tailor your UI on your website to cater to their needs more appropriately. Similarly, do you understand whether your customer is responding to email in the morning, or whether they actually respond to emails better in the evening? So again, if you can collect that data, you can start to segment your customer base by those people who respond well in the morning and those people who respond well in the evening, and then of course you can improve your email effectiveness as an example. And finally, the third component is around automation, and we'll talk about both personalization and automation in due course, just after this intro. But automation strategy is really will help identify those customer journeys where automation could be applied to make the largest business impact, and then designing those solutions to automate that journey. So marketing automation can help brands consistently deliver highly engaging, data-driven communications across their customers' preferred channels. And with solid strategy, data, and technology foundations in place, you can create sophisticated, data-driven marketing programs that delight your customers and actually also improve marketing ROI. So the goals of all three components is to do two things. Firstly, to of course deliver a better CX. So we know that research supports the view that customer experience is the new battleground, and that that's really what brands will live and die on in the foreseeable future. Having an amazing customer experience and using technology as appropriate to improve that CX. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is just the business results. So I'll go through briefly a number of use cases of personalization and automation, but broadly speaking, improving your revenue, improving your profitability, improving your acquisition, reducing your churn, and reducing your cost of advertising, or as they say, improving the return on advertising spend. These are all areas which are really business outcomes which you should be focusing on, and obviously technology has a huge role to play today in delivering those business outcomes. So the first thing around customer data strategy, or customer data generally, and again, this is back to some of the results from the survey, was that there are some challenges in the space, and really one of the major challenges today is in and around consumer trust. So as we all start to engage with brands through digital channels, we start to share data, and we need to know that the organization that we're sharing that data with respects our decision to share that data with them, and protects our data. But from the survey, we can see a couple of challenges here. So this is the data from the Australian survey. So in the 51% of the respondents, consumers, said that they were comfortable sharing the data with brands, sharing their personal information with brands. So just about half. So that's interesting. But 86% of marketers believe customers are comfortable sharing data with brands. So there's a gap of 35% there. So marketers need to work harder. I mean, that's the result here. Consumers are wary about sharing their personal information with brands, and they're only really going to do it if they trust that brand. So a key part of the customer data strategy is to have solid, to have some solid objectives around what will be required, and some initiatives to build on that customer trust. Similar results in Singapore. So 69% of marketeers in Singapore believe that consumers trust brands with their information, but just 57% of consumers agree. So again, there's a lower gap there, but there's still a significant gap. So again, marketeers in Singapore need to work in that space. Interestingly, if we go back to the previous slide as well, you can see that there's a significant delta between the numbers of marketers in Australia that believe that customers are comfortable compared to Singapore. So 86 versus 69%. So So the Australian marketeers are highly confident that consumers are trusting with their data, but in fact, fewer consumers do. So to combat this, how can brands approach this disconnect effectively? So I guess three things. Firstly, you've got to be transparent about the data you're collecting and also give consumers control over the information. Consumers who understand what information you're gathering and how it's being used and how they can stop sharing data are much more likely to trust your brand intentions. So if you don't have your data policies in your website or wherever you're collecting the data, if you're not making it easy for them to opt out, if you're not making it easy for them to understand what you're doing with their data, then that's what you need to be working on. Secondly, you need to make it really easy for consumers to see that you comply with relevant data regulations. So despite significant forces like GDPR, many consumers are still wary. You need to use clear language, so try and avoid using complex jargon or complex language. You need to lay out a really simple approach to how you're complying with data regulations, and again, simplify things like opt-ins and opt-outs and unsubscribe processes. So as an example, if you're working in, for example, fashion retail, and you allow a consumer to subscribe to a catalog on a website and an email on a website and a print catalog on a website, then you need to have the process which enable them to unsubscribe via that same channel. It's not really acceptable to say, well, if you want to unsubscribe to the print catalog, you have to call our call center, for example. So that's an example of where consumers will lose that trust because they say, well, it was okay for me to subscribe via the digital channel, but as soon as I want to unsubscribe, you make it complex for me. So the final thing is that you really need to deliver real value in exchange for that information. So customers, like myself and like all of you here listening, we're filling in forms, we're providing information, some of which is actually, quite private. For example, as, date of birth or your address or some of your preferences or things like that, your mobile number or maybe your social profiles, you're providing this information. So what am I getting back for that? Is it simply that I'll be receiving an email once a month with your new products, or actually are you going to give me something really of value? So, you've got to build trust with customers by, one of the good ways is showing an immediate return. So as an example, they get meaningful personalization, they'll get targeted discounts, or they'll get targeted relevant content to their needs. And when you're asking them for that data and collecting that data, make it clear what they'll be getting back for that. So to me, personalization right now is at this pivotal moment. We know that personalization is not easy. In fact, Gartner says that according to their research, by 2025, 80% of personalization efforts will be abandoned due to the lack of measurable ROI or the costs and the challenges of data privacy and data ethics. So it's not at all easy. And in fact, but we do know that personalization can bring some major benefits, which we'll talk through shortly. Today, 74% of consumers get frustrated with websites when content appears that has nothing to do with their interests. They're only, as soon as a customer basically steps onto a website or any kind of digital property and they start interacting with it through effective personalization technology, even if those people are not logged in, even if they're anonymous visitors, you are collecting data about this person, you are collecting data about them as a unique individual. And with the right platforms in place, you can start personalizing that experience from the very, very first click. And then, of course, with one of the benefits is that for those marketeers who can quantify the uplift in personalization, there's an average 19% uplift in sales. And you can see why that would be. Because, of course, if I'm perusing a website, as an example, electronics manufacturer or electronics distributor website, and I'm looking at a certain number of devices, and then they start recommending the accessories which are relevant to those devices as an example of some kind of personalization, then of course that revenue, there'll be an improvement in sales. If I go on to purchase that particular device, and then the brand knows that these accessories sell particularly well with that device, and I receive an email or some form of communications about a special offer on these accessories, and of course you can see why that would drive that kind of uplift. And in fact, it does correlate really, really well with the results that we saw at Acquia in the CX survey across APJ. So half of Australian brands, they actually identify personalization as a core component of their strategy to connect with consumers. And they also noted similar benefits, so increased conversions, 55% noted better conversions. just over half as well for a better response to discount offers and more repeat purchases, so 44%. And with a lot of organizations today, the cost of acquisition is really, really high. So to bring a new customer on board for that first transaction is a high cost. It's a high cost of acquisition through advertising and through media spend and you know, through investment in that relationship. So of course, the more that you can do to increase that repeat purchase and repeat purchase frequency, the higher the customer lifetime value will be, but also it starts to pay back that cost of acquisition very, very quickly. And in the data from Singapore, again, similar results, similar data. Again, slightly higher than global brands, but you know, 54% of Singaporean brands saw increased brand engagement. So we haven't talked a lot about brand engagement or brand advocacy, but of course, a more personalized experience will mean that the customer will go happier and they'll become your brand advocate. So they'll, you know, of course, share that experience with their friends and family and say, look, I had a fantastic experience at this shop, or I had a fantastic experience at this when I called up their call center. And you know, that leads to, so the brand engagement is really, really important. Conversions is a more direct metric and a, you know, usually where people turn to when they're looking at things like personalization, but also better response to discount offers. So 48% of Singaporean brands reported that when they made a discount offer, if they created some degree of personalization within that discount offer, they had a better response. Again, more repeat purchases and simple metrics like increased time on page. You know, and again, that's a reflection of engagement with the brand. So we know that there are some many benefits to personalization. We also know that it's not particularly easy to get it right. So I guess the next piece I'd just like to talk through is, you know, what do we recommend as an approach to personalization? How do you get started on delivering business benefits through personalization? And you know, the customers that we see have the most success with this, you know, follow this crawl, walk, run approach. Which is up here. So, you know, in the first phase, the crawl phase, this is really low hanging fruit. So you start this with lower effort tactics that win fast results. This does a couple of things. Obviously, it gets everybody in the team familiar with using whatever tools you need to drive those personalizations. It builds business confidence. So the stakeholders who are funding the efforts and the investment in personalization start to see results quickly. And I guess finally, you know, de-risks the effort. So if you start off with something very complex, like anything, the probability of success is lower because it's higher risk. Whereas if you start with something simpler and more straightforward, then it's more likely to be successful. So, you know, some crawl personalizations to consider include offering content based on a user's visit frequency. So if they visit the website or use the mobile app a lot, what does that mean? How can you use that information to tailor that experience? You can also use things like geolocation or device type. So if they're browsing on a mobile device or if they're browsing in a certain location, you know, how would you tailor that experience? So, you know, for example, if I'm an airline and I have you know, different geographies, and of course I would want you know, the fares to be different in different geographies. So I'm sitting here, I'm based in New Zealand, I'm based in Auckland. So the experience that I would get as somebody based in Auckland would be quite different, or should be quite different from maybe somebody based in a different part of the country in terms of, you know, what my likely interests are going to be and where I'm likely to want to book, you know, for my next holiday. And then as you get, you know, a little bit more sophisticated into the walk phase, you're moving from a kind of one-to-many personalization to one-to-some. So when we talked about something like geolocation, say in Auckland, we have a population of 1.5 million or so people. So, you know, that's a large segment, but still offering deals which are likely to be attractive to that segment would arguably be more effective and produce a better result than just offering blanket deals across the country. But it's a large segment. When you move to phase 2 in the walk phase, you're looking at things like, you know, you've completed your basic segmentation, your single data point personalization campaigns, and the next phase involves delivering contextual experiences based on a prior understanding of your audience. So these will be utilizing real-time data such as repeated page views, you know, newsletter subscriptions, webinar registrations, browsing behavior, and return visits. So one example could be, for example, if you're on a B2B organization, you might decide at a certain stage of that journey to display an ROI calculator to a visitor who's watched a demo video and maybe download an ebook. At the beginning of that journey, perhaps displaying that ROI calculator would be not the right thing to do. Might be confusing for them. It might be they might not understand the basics as to why you're presenting that calculator at that point in the journey. But for those website visitors who have completed certain tasks, downloaded the ebook, or potentially watched the video, maybe that's the right time to display that ROI calculator. And then finally, as you move into the more sophisticated personalizations, that's when you start to look at things like more complete integrations with other components of your MarTech stack. So of course, CRM will be a big part of that, and also looking at cross-channel behavior. So what's happening, not just in digital domain, but also what's happening in retail, what's happening in call centers, even extending that out to some kind of a partner ecosystem. So that's the most mature phase of personalization. And of course, these take more time and more effort to implement, but they can produce some really, really strong results. So you might think of, for example, a special sale and loyalty offer to those customers who have visited your site frequently and made 2 purchases in the last month and have a birthday coming up. So that's an example of how you can overlay those data sources. So there may be digital data sources from digital interactions. You may have information about, for example, when their birthday is from CRM, and you may have information about their transactions from either from a POS system, if you can integrate that, or again from CRM. So while it may take some time for the brands to learn how to replicate all these special face-to-face moments across their digital channels, it is possible through the right technology and of course by developing that CX strategy, which I mentioned earlier. I think here too, it's probably a good time to point out, so it's okay not to start off like Amazon, Netflix, or Spotify. Most brands don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to throw into personalization or into customer data, from the get-go. You need to start small. But even if you just move down that path slowly, you can start to see a real big impact on your customer experience, and obviously, more importantly, arguably a big impact on your bottom line. And I mentioned this earlier, but once you've collected this customer data, and once you've got that customer data strategy and personalization and automation strategy in place, there are a number of really, really high value use cases which we see our customers are getting value from and focusing on. And I won't go to these in detail again. You're welcome to reach out to myself or to Rachel to initiate a conversation. But the goal here is really in 4 distinct categories. One is to use the information that you have around customers and customer behavior to improve the return on the advertising spend through things like hyper targeting or ad suppression. Also increasing digital revenue. So probably, hopefully, a number of you on this webinar have heard of things like browse abandonment. So that somebody's added a certain number of products to a shopping cart. They then don't check out for whatever reason, or they start completing, for example, a registration process, and they don't complete that registration process for whatever reason. So again, create a segment around those customers of shopping cart or registration abandoners, and then create triggered emails or SMSs or other forms of communication. Could even be direct mail. So you can actually get those people to complete the purchase. As well, lifetime value or increasing customer lifetime value is a major area of where customer data strategy and will drive those kind of results. A number of brands have loyalty programs, but from our experience, there's a good potential to improve the quality of the data residing in that loyalty program, and also to overlay the data which is in the loyalty program with other sources of customer data to get even better results. And what I'll talk through just after this section is just a couple of examples of our customers who have done this successfully and what that looks like. And then I guess finally, customer insights. So by bringing together those disparate sources of customer data and being able to unify them, online and offline data, you can create much more meaningful customer insights and make those insights and that data available across the organization. So we talked in the last webinar about shortage of some talent in the areas of, for example, data science or analytics specialists. But with the right platforms, you can actually give access to everyone in the organization to that same data, have a single view of the customer, but also a single source of truth for that customer information. So, how does personalization and marketing automation relate, and how does this look? People, as we know, they talk about in marketing about delivering or developing customer empathy at scale. So to do that, you need to be able to collect as much data as you can about every customer interaction, across that customer journey. So it could be, for example, information coming from your POS or from your email service provider, from your CRM, from your customer service agents, and as I mentioned earlier, the website behaviors. Also, you can actually append third-party data. So, once you have a really robust core of customer data, you can then start to look to other data providers to append that data with third-party data. And then that unified customer data profile becomes the core of your marketing intelligence. And then through marketing automation, you make that data and those segments, that marketing intelligence available across the customer journey, the different stages of that life cycle, and across all those channels. So, we talked about web, but there's things like wearables and retail store associates, digital advertising, and chat, which some people may not have thought of as being something that you can actually drive through personalization and marketing automation, but it is completely possible. And as you start to automate some of these journeys, what I thought would be useful just to show, a very, very simple example of how this could look. So this is a screenshot from Acquia Campaign Studio, which is part of the Acquia Marketing Cloud. So you can see here, you have a segment of customers. You may send them a campaign, and then you may wait for a few days, and then you may, have some logic which says, well, did they purchase anything or did they not? And then if they did, then you can trigger actions. So in this example, and apologies for the poor quality of the screenshot, so hopefully it's readable, but you can send them an email which will be kind of thank you for your purchase and follow up, and maybe you offer them some additional products or ask them how they went. You can add them to a segment, so you can add them to a segment of recently purchased people, or depending on the category of product or the individual product, you can actually add them to different segments. And you can also start to do things like build engagement scores. So you can add, for example, here it said add 25 points to their engagement score. So, that you can kind of see how you can trigger multiple actions from a single, data point. And then if they didn't purchase, so going down the right-hand side of that slide, within 4, you can send them, say, an email discount code, and then again, go through that same process again, ask them, after you sent the discount, did they complete or not complete that purchase? So it's just a quick way of showing how a visual journey builder works, and how that can really help you visualize and build those customer journeys. So, obviously better quality customer data that's aggregated from all customer touch points will help drive more impactful personalizations. But another really significant benefit is that by building the solid data foundation, it also lets brands take advantage of things like predictive analytics. So this is, again, it's just a screenshot from Acquia CDP, Acquia Customer Data Platform. And you can see that once this data foundation is in place, it's simple. It's actually really, really simple to apply machine learning to build these intelligent segments. So as you go through, as you start with your core customer data set, and then you'll start to do things like looking at things like likelihood to buy, or this month, or likelihood to convert, and brands can understand customers, behavioral likelihood to buy, likelihood to churn, likelihood to convert. So when you're considering things like offering discounts, you won't necessarily offer all the discounts to everyone. You'll just say, okay, for those customers who we believe through the algorithms and through our machine learning are very likely to churn, we'll offer them a different set of discounts than those who, we think just a little bit likely to churn or not likely to churn. And similarly with likelihood to convert. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there. And the final thing really around automation is, obviously one of the goals is customer experience and bottom line, but it's also around increasing operational efficiency. So you can see these are some of the examples, again, that we see from customers who have implemented Acquia Customer Data Platform. And you can see why tasks that used to take weeks, utilizing specialist resources, can now be performed by marketing teams in 30 minutes. So that means that the people who were, creating those reports or creating the insights, they can be, redeployed to more valuable tasks. But it's not just about the increased efficiency, it's also about giving the wider teams access to the unified customer data analytics and segmentation across the organization as a whole. So it's not limited to just marketing. It can be, you know, people who are driving teams in operations or sales or service or care. They can all have access to that same data, which is of course can make a dramatic impact to the organization. So automation reduces the time it takes for a business to be able to make well-informed decisions based on up-to-date and relevant data, and that really drives agility. So business agility, you can make decisions faster, better decisions faster, and also create, and this leads to creating competitive advantage. So, you know, the key to both personalization and automation is to have confidence in your customer data. So a customer data platform needs the agility and open integration to be able to collect data from as many sources as possible, but also cleanse and unify the data to build a unified customer 360 profile. Access to better quality customer and intelligent technology can drive better decision-making around things like pricing, around discounts, customer segmentation, product recommendations, and also improve campaign investment. So again, this is from Acquia CDP. You know, it does provide these services. It also provides out of the box over 400 metrics, and you can see some of these, which you can hopefully see would be useful to have insights and analytics around, and also providing those predictive and clustering model variants that we talked through earlier. So finally, I'd just like to take through just briefly a couple of case studies and just to hopefully bring this to life in terms of, you know, how this works and how this has been working really, really well for a number of our customers. So this website here is Arçelik, which are a Turkish company who are in the whiteware business, manufacturing and retailing of household goods. They're quite large, and they have multiple brands operating in more than 30 countries. And it's actually Europe's 4th largest white goods company in total sales. We're talking here about call center interactions. So again, I wanted to use this example because it's outside of a traditional digital context. It's not a website app or digital experience. It's you know, they realize that call centers are a key customer touch point. You can generate revenue, you can increase or decrease customer satisfaction very, very quickly in a call center interaction. And what they needed to do is they really needed to come up with a solution which will give those care agents or those call center agents the full customer picture for 2 reasons. One is so that they can personalize the call experience, and secondly, so they can reduce churn. And without the customer data platform, that's quite difficult because they only have visibility into previous support calls and transaction history of those support calls. So by giving them the 360 customer profile, agents can very, very quickly tailor the call and the responses and follow up those responses to each individual. So what this looks like for them from I guess from a UI or from an experience point of view for that agent, or that call center agent, is you know, the goal here is to actually increase the upsell conversions and improve the customer experience. As I said earlier, before that, they didn't have access to the previous. They only had access to previous call center interactions. But with the integration with Acquia CDP 360 API, they integrated that with their call center script tool, and they had some massive results. So 100% increase in conversions from outbound call campaigns from 1 to 2%. And you can see here the fields in yellow are the ones, these are the data points which are dynamically inserted into those call scripts using the information available in CDP. So example, the customer's answer to a specific question introduced into the conversation during the assembly and repair process was something like, would you consider buying an electronic product of whatever nature in the next 6 months? And if they would say yes, then that would automatically trigger a quick win campaign to them, which was really successful. So you know, they had massive improvements to their SMS conversions. They had a 24% uplift on their conversion rates for their quick win campaigns. But they also had a much better understanding of their customers. So originally they had 250 million deduplicated customer records. So something that a customer or an entity had performed with, you know, one of their channels, but they weren't sure, you know, whether it was one person doing, you know, interacting, I guess, on that customer journey in multiple touch points, or a single customer. Going through this process with Acquia CDP helped them duplicate those customer records to create 60 million out of their initial 250 million. So, you know, again, building that solid customer data foundation has been really, really helpful for them. And you know, we know that actually it had the knock-on effect of better customer service, even if it's not sales, is that, you know, consumers are willing to spend more with companies that do and can consistently deliver that excellent customer service. And finally, the second one and the last one I'll go through today, which is more retail focused in some respects, or at least more boutique, is Godiva. So I hope that many of you are familiar with Godiva as a brand, boutique and chocolate brand. So, you know, they're the global leader actually in premium chocolates, and it was founded in 1926. They wanted to provide their shoppers with a premium experience, sort of regardless of whether they were visiting in store, whether they were shopping on the website or accessing the app. They did replace their CRM vendor in 2019, and they wanted a best-in-class customer data platform that would actually unify all their data. So, you know, again, develop strong identity resolution, know who the customers were, help them with 360-degree view of the customer dashboards, ad hoc queries, analytical insights, and drive that advanced segmentation that we're talking through earlier with personalization. You know, they really wanted to understand what content and messaging and offers will be most effective at driving sales and you know, driving personalization through a unified view of the customer. And during the middle of this, I guess, digital transformation for that organization, you know, COVID struck, so they had to, you know, follow that e-commerce first strategy. Again, the results for Godiva were very, very positive. The Acquia CDP has become a key pillar in their digital transformation, in fact, and the results have been splendid. So they have a you know, again, increased their email open rates, or double the increase of their email open rates. Click-through rates have gone up, and a massive increase in their return on advertising spend for a specific Mother's Day campaign, just by using, you know, just by using the customer data effectively and by activating that data through their marketing automation. So we're nearly at the hour, so I'll just summarize. Thanks again for joining us. You know, bringing us all together, the first thing you really need to do is define your customer data strategy. You know, before you start talking about personalization, or before you start talking about marketing automation, it's really important to really have a solid customer data strategy. Consider how you will close that trust gap with the transparent data strategy. We talked through, you know, some of the areas in terms of, you know, letting consumers understand how you comply easily, letting them opt in or opt out easily, and showing them real value for their data, for their sharing of their data very, very quickly. You know, map and document your customer journeys. And it's important to, it's surprising how many organizations don't actually understand their customer journeys end to end, and they haven't really mapped them out. So, you know, either work with an agency or internal team, start to map out those customer journeys and identify where personalization could make a really positive business impact. If you're moving to personalization, start small, don't try to do everything at once. Just use a few use cases which are easy to implement, that will build confidence within the team and also build confidence within the people, the stakeholders who are investing in personalization workstream. And finally, to be effective, both personalization and automation need that solid customer data foundation. So thank you very much again. Look, this is Acquia's Open DXP. We're really excited about Acquia Open DXP, about helping customers you know, get the most of their customer data and the integration of data and content. Very happy to pick up a conversation with yourselves, or so please do reach out to myself or Rachel after the call if you're interested in further conversations. Thank you very much, and back over to you, Rachel.
Okay, thank you, Phil. So if you guys have any questions right now, you can always use the chat windows or the Q&A function. So I'd like to thank you guys for attending. The slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted on our website, and we will also send out via email as well. Okay. So thank you very much again for your time, and we will see you in our next webinars. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.